Thanks for the agenda. I read everything. I didn't understand everything. And this is about the container registry migration plan. How long does it time? So we have the metadata in flat files. Let's just call them flat files. And we're going to fill a database with kind of the metadata. How long does it take to fill that database?
Are you talking for the entirety of GitLab.com or for a particular image?
The entirety of GitLab.com.
So that is something that we have the ability to parallelize. So it depends on the number of workers. You know, with 8 workers, it could take around 60 days in a pretty optimistic time path. And that's if we have the IO capacity to handle the workers who are, you know, constantly up at that level.
Okay. Have we ever done a garbage collection run? No, because we need the database to do that, right?
Yeah, the way that the system works since we installed it, Sid, has been that the garbage collection can only happen in read-only or offline mode. And so it's not possible to do without completely disabling people's right access across all of GitLab.com.
We need a DB to run it online.
Correct.
I'm looking forward to kind of deleting the 3 petabytes of data. How big is that? So that's 40% of our total size. So we got about like 8 petabytes of data or something in it.
I believe we have 6 total.
6 total. How much is it going to save us to do this move? Because I think we should take, that's going to take 60 days to transfer anyway. So you're getting the benefit across the entire data set that you're going to delete for an average of 30 days. So it's like you're saving 3 petabytes times one month.
Crawling the, so the way that we're importing now is top down. We're accessing these blobs through their content addressable address. Walking these blobs in a bottom up way by crawling that part of the file system is pretty problematic because the actual number of files is probably somewhere from 500 million to potentially 1 billion. And these are only divided into 256 prefixes. So each prefix could have millions of records. And finding a way to parallelize that and having a way to checkpoint the work, so to speak, isn't something that we've considered with this proposal, and it's probably potentially pretty difficult, and it's not clear if we are able to do that in a reasonable time span.
Okay, that went over my head a bit. I'm not as familiar with the matter as you are. Maybe let me zoom out a little bit. I think we're going to introduce this complexity of moving stuff around, moving the binaries around. And as I understood it, we're doing it so we can start online garbage collection earlier. So now I want to weigh kind of the complexity of moving stuff around, especially as it affects our self-managed customers, versus the savings of getting there on average, for the average file, 30 days earlier. So that's the trade-off. I'm not sure that's the trade-off. That's a trade-off as I understand it so far. If that is the trade-off, I kind of want to know, kind of put a dollar number on both sides of that balance.
Right.
to make it.
Yeah, so there's the difficulty in walking that part of the file system. It's just not subdivided enough to be convenient to access, I guess is the best way to put it.
I think you're explaining how we cannot walk the flat files.
For the blob storage side, if we're going to go through all the blobs, we need to access them through the blobs. So the registry keeps all the blobs in a per instance sort of pile, and they're not scoped by repository. They're not scoped by group. They're just scoped by the instance.
If you're explaining to me why we need a database to do the online store GC, I understand that. But if you're explaining something else, can you explain? I don't know.
Can I? Yeah, I was just going to interject real quick. So that what I hear you asking, Sid, is trading off against the costs as we're migrating in duplication of the files and how much money we would save or a customer would save during that time. Is that a fair representation of what you're asking?
I think moving files around introduces complexity.
Yeah.
I think history shows if we ship more complex stuff to our self-managed customers, they have more risk. They're going to hold off on upgrading. We have more support and help to do and everything else. So I want to reduce the complexity we ship to our self-managed customers. At the same time, I want to do the same thing on our SaaS system as we ship to our self-managed customers, because we want to make sure we test everything ourselves before we ship it. That's why I said, look, let's try to not move the binaries, not between buckets, not between namespaces. Now, the argument that I'm hearing for like, let's start moving them is, hey, we can start garbage collection 60 days earlier. So for the average file, it's going to be garbage collected 30 days earlier, and we're going to save 3 petabytes of storage. That's great. That's money saved. So asking, how much money is that?
I think, Sid, just to respond, that it's not exactly a trade-off, because what we're talking about is it would cost us about 2 to 3 months worth of development work to change a method, if it's even possible at all, without risking data loss. So it's not necessarily a trade-off of we're just getting to run online garbage collection faster. It's that we're getting to run it more accurately and without the extra development work. And there's a series of unknown. We haven't vetted anything new with the infrastructure or delivery team, so there's a bunch of unknowns there. But when we originally looked and said, okay, thumb in the air, how long will it take to move to an approach where we don't move data? It was 4 to 6 months worth of unknowns because we haven't done it.
So it's more work to not move the data. Why is that?
Maybe Haley can answer that one.
Or I can answer too, Haley, if you prefer. Up to you. Yeah. So without having an accurate inventory of what's in storage right now, we can't actually go do a cleanup.
I understand that you first need to fill the database. But you need to fill the database anyway. Right.
And so for self-managed customers, it's a little bit less of a complex problem for the majority, and we've been able to look at data sizes and all that sort of stuff. So the benefit of the reason we need to do this move, aside from some of the benefits that Stan mentioned in the agenda, is that we can't accurately represent what's in the storage in the blob file system, the structures that we have in there, because we don't have a good way to do that analysis in real time without actually having the database there to begin with. So we're actually in a position.
I don't understand. We need to fill the database with metadata anyway. I don't think it makes a difference whether you move it or not. Like, we need to fill the database with metadata. I don't see how it's extra. Where's that extra development work coming from?
Well, yes, you do have to fill it with the database, but then you have to answer the question, okay, how do I may have a lot of cruft left over. How do I know? I have my database, but then I don't actually know what's in the file system without crawling that entire thing, right? So that's what I think Haley's talking about, something we have to crawl a file system and make that consistent with the database. That's a hard thing to do, right? Because the object storage is not always consistent. You could write something in object storage and read it back. It's not always going to give you this same answer. There's a lot of room for error for that. I don't even know if we could get that to work consistently with like a 3 petabyte system, right? That's the risk I think we're talking about. It may take 6 months to 12 months to get that cleanup to work, and we may not even get that right. So it's just a huge amount of work.
Okay, so let me try to think through this. So there's two sources of truth: the file system and the flat files. And to fill the database, we're going to use the flat files. But there's going to be stuff that's not represented in the flat files, but still on the file system. If we just move stuff across, when we're done with moving, we can just delete whatever is gone. If we don't move stuff across, we got to do an inventory of the files that are there and start explicitly deleting them. And that's extra work.
Right.
Okay, well, that makes sense. How's this? So I think we just solved the most crucial question that was on top of my mind. How is this going to work for self-managed customers?
With self-managed customers, the amount of data is just quite a bit smaller, and they should be able to migrate in place. It's just so much less data. It's not as big of an issue to walk it to go through that. It's just less work. It's a scale issue.
I mean, they could still use the same mechanism, right? At the end of the day, they're going to have 2 paths in their bucket: old path, new path. Once you've migrated, they can wipe out the old path, or we can do it for them, and they should be up and running, right?
If they can do that. It's also possible if they perform the import, even online import with the garbage collection disabled. They should be able to pass through the object storage, the file system metadata, and then also, since they have less data than 6 petabytes, for example, they can go through and collect and put that data into the database and fill up all the blobs in total, not just the ones that are referenced, if that makes sense. So they will have the ability to do this full inventory just due to the nature of just a smaller amount of data. It's also possible that we could do exactly as we're doing with GitLab.com, and they will have a new prefix that they can choose and move the data over that way. Both things are possible for self-managed.
I think another point there, Sid, particularly regarding our self-managed customers, we actually have many of our self-managed customers who are doing offline garbage collection. We've done a lot of work to enable that and make it a lot faster than it originally was, and that work's been going on prior to this effort to migrate. So there's actually a smaller subset of our self-managed customers that would have the opportunity then to get some extra help from us if necessary, but they could use the same methodology that GitLab.com does.
Cool. So suppose self-managed customers choose the not move route. They run offline garbage collection, or they just don't care so much about the savings. Is there a risk that they run into bugs that we haven't run into with GitLab.com because we did something else?
Well, I mean, I think, and Haley, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we can't guarantee anything, of course, with different environments. I think that's always a consideration, but we've been running code in production disabled, with the database side disabled, in an effort to avoid unexpected bugs. And that's gone through our normal release processes and reviews and all those sorts of things in an effort to understand the impact and get ahead of that curve.
Cool. Stan?
Yeah, and the mechanism internally that's used to do this was originally developed as a standalone tool that does do the full import of all the data. That was our kind of the first pass at it, first iteration on it. So this is, we've iterated on that tool internally, and it's that same sort of structure that's going to be used for the .com migration as well as self-managed migration. The process is rather similar. The mechanism by which that blob side of the storage is walked over, is iterated over, that's been built into the registry since day one, as far as our perspective is. So that's a piece of code that is, quite has a quite of a few years of burn-in period. So that's relatively low risk.
Cool.
Is it fair to say that self-managed customers have 3 options? They can do offline garbage collection, which has been an option all along. They can do a kind of simpler form of online or migration, or they can do the more complex process that GitLab.com is doing, which is required at a certain scale.
That's correct.
Cool. Stan, anything else I should know?
No, I think that's, I put my 3 points in there. I think the point F3 is where I think I think hopefully answers that question you were talking about today.
Yeah, I think what I missed is that, look, we don't, if we don't do the move, we'd have to build like an inventory of what's in the bucket. And this way we don't, we don't have to build that up from what's in the bucket. We can only use the database, which is kind of coming from the flat files. So yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for hopping on a call to explain it to me. I'm supportive of the moving approach.
All right. Thanks very much for your time, Sid. Much appreciated.
Thank you.